Hello, my kiddos. All right, so last time the Fellowship of the Ring got to the forest of Lothlorien, and they met some elves from Lothlorien, and they found out that the elves of Lothlorien really don't like dwarves, because the dwarves of Moria woke up the Balrog, and then that brought orcs that now live in Moria. So now the elves of Lothlorien have orcs living right outside their border. Right, so that's where we pick up the story. Legolas at once went down the ladder to take Haldir's message, and soon afterwards Merry and Pippin clambered up onto the high flet. They were out of breath and seemed rather scared. "There," said Merry, panting, "we have lugged up your blankets as well as our own. Strider has hidden all the rest of our baggage in a deep drift of leaves." "You had no need of your burdens," said Haldir. "It is cold in the treetops in winter, though the wind tonight is in the south. We have food and drink to give you that will drive away the night chill, and we have skins and cloaks to spare." The hobbits accepted this second, and far better, supper very gladly. Then they wrapped themselves warmly, not only in the fur cloaks of the elves, but in their own blankets as well, and tried to go to sleep. But weary as they were, only Sam found that easy to do. Hobbits do not like heights, and do not sleep upstairs, even when they have any stairs. The flet was not at all like their liking was not at all to their liking as a bedroom. It had no walls, not even a rail. Only on one side was there a light plated screen, which could be moved and fixed in different places according to the wind. Pippin went on talking for a while. "I hope, if I do go to sleep in this bird loft, that I shan't roll off," he said. "Once I do go to sleep," said Sam, "I shall go on sleeping, whether I roll off or no. And the less said, the sooner I'll drop off, if you take my meaning." Frodo lay for some time awake, and looked up at the stars glinting through the pale roof of quivering leaves. Sam was snoring at his side long before he himself closed his eyes. He could dimly see the gray forms of two elves sitting motionless with their arms about their knees, speaking in whispers. The other had gone down to take up his watch on one of the lower branches. At last, lulled by the wind in the boughs above, and the sweet murmur of the falls of Nimrodel below, Frodo fell asleep with the song of Legolas running in his mind. Late in the night he awoke. The other hobbits were asleep. The elves were gone. The sickle moon was gleaming dimly among the leaves. The wind was still. A little way off he heard a harsh laugh, and the tread of many feet on the ground below. There was a ring of metal. The sounds died slowly away, and seemed to go southward, on into the wood. A head appeared suddenly through the hole in the flet. Frodo sat up in alarm, and saw that it was a gray hooded elf. He looked towards the hobbits. "What is it?" said Frodo. "Yerch," said the elf in a hissing whisper, and cast onto the left the rope ladder rolled up. "Orcs," said Frodo. "What are they doing?" But the elf had gone. There were no more sounds. Even the leaves were silent, and the very falls seemed to be hushed. Frodo sat and shivered in his wraps. He was thankful that they had not been caught on the ground, but he felt that the trees offered little protection except concealment. Orcs were as keen as hounds on a scent, it was said, but they could also climb. He drew out Sting. It flashed and glittered like a blue flame, and then slowly faded away and grew dull. In spite of the fading of his sword, he felt the feeling of immediate danger did not leave Frodo. Rather, it grew stronger. He got up and crawled to the opening and peered down. He was almost certain that he could hear stealthy movements at the tree's foot far below. Not elves, for the woodland folk were altogether noiseless in their movements. Then he heard faintly a sound like sniffing, and something seemed to be scrabbling on the bark of the tree trunk. He stared down into the dark, holding his breath. Something was now climbing slowly, and its breath came like a soft hissing through closed teeth. Then, coming up, close to the stem, Frodo saw two pale eyes. They stopped and gazed upward, unwinking. Suddenly they turned away, and a shadowy figure slipped around the trunk of the tree and vanished. Immediately afterwards, Haldir came climbing swiftly up through the branches. "There was something in this tree that I have never seen before," he said. "It was not an orc. It fled as soon as I touched the tree stem. It seemed to be wary, and to have some skill in trees, or I might have thought that it was one of you hobbits. I did not shoot, for I dared not arouse any cries. We cannot risk battle. A strong company of orcs has passed. They crossed the Nimrodel, cursed their foul feet in its clean water, and went down to the old roadside beside the river. To the old road beside the river. They seemed to pick up some scent, and they searched the ground for a while near the place where you halted. The three of us could not challenge 100, so we went ahead and spoke with feigned voices, leading them on into the woods. Orphan has now gone in haste back to our dwellings to warn our people. None of the orcs will ever return out of Lorien, and there will be many elves hidden on the northern border before another night falls. But you must take the road south as soon as it is full light." "All right, kiddos. So what do you think was trying to climb up the tree? It wasn't an orc, and Haldir thought it might have been a hobbit. You think that's what's been following them all this time? That Frodo keeps hearing the pitter-patter of feet?" Day came pale from the east. As the light grew, it filtered through the yellow leaves of the malern, and it seemed to the hobbits that the early sun of cool summer's morning was shining. Pale blue sky peeped among the moving branches. Looking through an opening on the south side of the flet, Frodo saw all the valley of the Silverlode lying like a sea of fallow gold, tossing gently in the breeze. The morning was still young and cold when the company set out again, guided by Haldir and his brother Rúmil. "Farewell, sweet Nimrodel," cried Legolas. Frodo looked back and caught a gleam of white foam among the gray tree stems. "Farewell," he said. It seemed to him that he would never hear again a running water so beautiful, for ever blending its innumerable notes in an endless, changeful music. They went back to the path and They went back to the path that still went on along the west side of the Silverlode, and for some way they followed it southward. There were the prints of orc feet in the earth, but soon Haldir turned aside into the trees and halted on the bank of the river under their shadows. "There is one of my people yonder across the stream," he said, "though you may not see him." He gave a call like the low whistle of a bird, and out of a thicket of young trees an elf stepped, clad in gray, with his hood thrown back. His hair glinted like gold in the morning sun. Haldir skillfully cast over the stream a coil of gray rope, and he caught it and bound the end about a tree near the bank. "Celebrant is already a strong stream here, as you see," said Haldir, "and it runs both swift and deep, and is very cold. We do not set foot in it so far north, unless we must. But in these days of watchfulness, we do not make bridges. This is how we cross. Follow me." He made his end of the rope fast about another tree, and then ran lightly along it, over the river and back again, as if he were on a road. "I can walk this path," said Legolas. But the others have not this skill. Must they swim? No, said Haldir. We have 2 more ropes. We will fasten them above the other, one shoulder high and another half high, and holding these the stranger should be able to cross with care. When this slender bridge had been made, the company passed over, some cautiously and slowly, others more easily. Of the hobbits, Pippin proved the best, for he was sure-footed, and he walked over quickly, holding only with one hand, but he kept his eyes on the bank ahead and did not look down. Sam shuffled along, clutching hard and looking down into the pale, eddying water as if it was a chasm in the mountains. He breathed with relief when he was safely across. Live and learn, as my gaffer used to say, though he was thinking of gardening, not roosting like a bird, nor of trying to walk like a spider. Not even my Uncle Andy ever did a trick like that. When at length all the company was gathered on the east bank of the Silverlode, the elves untied the ropes and coiled 2 of them. Rumil, who had remained on the other side, drew back the last one, slung it on his shoulder, and with a wave of his hand went back to Nimrodel to keep watch. Now, friends, said Haldir, you have entered the Nath of Lorien, on the Gore, as you would say, for it is the land that lies like a spearhead between the arms of Silverlode and Anduin the Great. We allow no strangers to spy out the secrets of Nath. We allow no strangers to spy out the secrets of the Nath. Few indeed are permitted even to set foot here. As was agreed, I shall here blindfold the eyes of Gimli the dwarf. The others may walk free for a while until we come nearer to our dwellings, down in Egladil, in the angle between the waters. This was not at all to the liking of Gimli. The agreement was made without my consent, he said. I will not walk blindfold like a beggar or a prisoner, and I am no spy. My folk have never had dealings with any of the servants of the enemy. Neither have we done harm to the elves. I am no more likely to betray you than Legolas, or any of the others of my companions. I do not doubt you, said Haldir, yet this is our law. I am not the master of the law, and cannot set it aside. I have done much in letting you set foot over Celebrant. Gimli was obstinate. He planted his feet firmly apart and laid his hand upon the haft of his axe. I will go forward free, he said, or I will go back and seek my own land, where I am known to be true of word, though I perish alone in the wilderness. You cannot go back, said Haldir sternly. Now you have come thus far, you must be brought before the Lord and the Lady. They shall judge you, to hold you or to give you leave, as they will. You cannot cross the rivers again, and behind you there are now secret sentinels that you cannot pass. You would be slain before you saw them. Gimli drew his axe from his belt. Haldir and his companion bent their bows. A plague on dwarves and their stiff necks, said Legolas. Come, said Aragorn. If I am still to lead this company, you must do as I bid. It is hard upon the dwarf to be thus singled out. We will all be blindfolded, even Legolas. That will be best, though it will make the journey slow and dull. Gimli laughed suddenly. A merry troop of fools we shall look. Will Haldir lead us all along on a string, like many blind beggars with one dog? But I will be content, if only Legolas here shares my blindness. I am an elf and a kinsman here, said Legolas, becoming angry in his turn. Now let us cry, a plague on the stiff necks of the elves, said Aragorn, but the company shall all fare alike. Come, bind our eyes, Haldir. I shall claim full amends for every fallen stubbed toe if you do not lead us well, said Gimli, as they bound a cloth about his eyes. You will have no claim, said Haldir. I shall lead you well, and the paths are smooth and straight. Alas for the folly of these days, said Legolas. Here all are enemies of the one enemy, and yet I must walk blind while the sun is merry in the woodland under leaves of gold. Folly it may seem, said Haldir, Indeed, in nothing is the power of the Dark Lord more clearly shown than in the estrangement that divides all those who still oppose him. Yet so little faith and trust do we find now in the world beyond Lothlorien, unless maybe in Rivendell, that we dare not by our own trust endanger our land. We live now upon an island amid many perils, and our hands are more often upon the bowstring than upon the harp. The rivers long defended us, but they are a sure guard no more, for the shadow has crept northward all about us. Some speak of departing, yet for that it already seems too late. The mountains to the west are growing evil. To the east the lands are waste and full of Sauron's creatures. And it is rumored that we cannot now safely pass southward through Rohan, and the mouths of the great river are watched by the enemy. Even if we could come to the shores of the sea, we should find no longer any shelter there. It is said that there are still havens of the high elves, but they are far north and west, beyond the land of the halflings. But where that may be, though the Lord and Lady may know, I do not. You ought at least to guess, since you have seen us, said Merry. There are elf havens west of my land, the Shire, where hobbits live. Happy folk are hobbits to dwell near the shores of the sea, said Haldir. It is long indeed since any of my folk have looked on it, yet still we remember it in song. Tell me of these havens as we walk. I cannot, said Merry. I have never seen them. I have never been out of my own land before. And if I had known what the world outside was like, I don't think I should have had the heart to leave it. Not even to see fair Lothlorien, said Haldir. The world is indeed full of peril, and in it there may be dark places, but still there is much that is fair. And though in all lands love is now mingled with grief, it grows perhaps the greater. Some there are among us who sing that the shadow will draw back and peace shall come again. Yet I do not believe that the world about us will ever again be as it was of old, or the light of the sun as it was aforetime. For the elves, I fear, it will prove at best a truce, in which they may pass to the sea unhindered and leave Middle-earth forever. Alas for Lothlorien that I love. It would be a poor life in a land where no malern grew. But if there are malern trees beyond the great sea, none have reported it. As they spoke thus, the company filed slowly along the paths of the wood, led by Haldir, while the other elf walked behind. They felt the ground beneath their feet smooth and soft, and after a while they walked more freely, without fear of hurt or fall. Being deprived of sight, Frodo found his hearing and other senses sharpened. He could smell the trees and the trodden grass. He could hear many different notes in the rustle of the leaves overhead, the river murmuring away on his right, and the thin clear voices of birds high in the sky. He felt the sun upon his face and hands when they passed through an open glade. As soon as he set foot upon the far bank of the Silverlode, a strange feeling had come upon him, and it deepened as he walked on into the Neath. It seemed to him that he had stepped over a bridge of time into a corner of the elder days, and was now walking in a world that was no more. In Rivendell there was memory of ancient things. In Lorien, the ancient things still lived on in the walking world. Evil had been seen and heard there. Sorrow had been known. The elves feared and distrusted the world outside. Wolves were howling in the wood's borders, but on the land of Lorien, no shadow lay. And that's where we stop tonight, kiddos. I love you always and forever, no matter what.